So I heard this quote on a podcast a couple of months ago, and it really stuck with me. It's that hard times create strong men.
That's what she said.
Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I thought it explained a lot about what's happening in this current moment. And when I started researching it for this video, I realized that it's really popular within the manosphere.
Ew.
And it's used as a slam against Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So I kind of questioned my entire worldview and belief system in that moment.
Am I crazy?
And yet, here we are, I stand by it. Not in some deterministic way where history runs in perfect cycles, but in the simple biological sense that struggle builds capacity where comfort doesn't. This statement is based on the Strauss-Howe generational theory. And we are currently right here. The Obama years were optimistic and the internet was full of promise. Like things seemed to be getting better and tech was improving our lives. Good times creating weak men, which means now we have weak men creating hard times. And yet the hard times are going to look different this time around. We're not giving up antibiotics and central heating to build character. I like having a dishwasher, I'm keeping my dishwasher. So if comfort really does make us softer and we're not planning to give up comfort, then the question becomes, how do we build resilience when we actually have resources and safety and, indoor plumbing? Let's look at what's actually happening. Anxiety rates are climbing. Depression rates are climbing. We are in a mental health crisis that everyone acknowledges, even if we disagree about the causes. And there's research suggesting that distress tolerance, the ability to sit with uncomfortable feelings without immediately trying to fix them or escape them, is going down, especially among younger people. And we see this showing up everywhere. College professors report students asking for extensions or accommodations for regular academic stress, things that previous generations would have just pushed through. Not talking about students with actual documented disabilities or mental health conditions, but just students who feel, let's say, anxious about a presentation or overwhelmed about a deadline, and they just want to opt out or delay it. There's discourse about mental health days becoming so common that some workplaces are struggling with people taking them for minor discomfort rather than genuine crisis. Teachers on Reddit and TikTokers share stories about students who won't attempt assignments that they might not be perfect at or who shut down at the first sight of difficulty. Again, it's not about dismissing real mental health struggles or real reasons to want to just take a day off of work. You can do it because you want to. But there's also this pattern of treating any uncomfortable feeling as a reason to stop, to protect yourself, to avoid. Now, you can interpret that a bunch of different ways. Maybe now we are just better at identifying mental health issues. Maybe economic instability and climate anxiety are creating legitimate news stressors. Maybe phones and social media are breaking our brains. All of those things can be true and more. And also, comfort might be making us less equipped to handle difficulty. Not because there is something morally wrong with being comfortable, but that's just how biology works. Your muscles get stronger when you stress them. Your immune system gets better at fighting things when it encounters pathogens. And psychological resilience works the same way. You get better at handling difficulty by actually handling difficulty. People who lived through the Depression or World War II often had different capacities than people who didn't. That's not nostalgia, that is observable. They could tolerate discomfort that would have most of us complaining within minutes. So when people say the younger generations are soft, there might be something to that, not as a character flaw, but as a predictable outcome of having fewer mandatory struggles. Now, I'm not romanticizing poverty here. I'm not saying that we should eliminate safety regulations so that people can build character through workplace injuries. My grandmother's resilience came at a real cost. She had limited options, and her strength was sometimes just survival mode, and she never got to turn it off. Medical advances are good. Labor rights are good. Access to therapy, good things, right? We're keeping all of that. And here's where anti-fragility really comes in. Anti-fragility was coined by Nassim Taleb, who argues that the goal is not just about surviving stress or being resilient. It's about actually getting stronger from stress. And one example he uses is your muscles. You lift weights and you stress the muscle fibers, and then they repair stronger. You can't build anti-fragility without the stressor. You can't get stronger muscles without lifting something heavy. You can't build psychological resilience without experiencing psychological discomfort. But here's where it gets tricky. The dose makes the poison. Lifting weights makes you stronger. Carrying a heavy load 24/7 with no rest breaks you down. Acute manageable stress leads to growth, and chronic overwhelm stress leads to breakdown. And I think we've accidentally gotten the stress equation backward in modern life. We've eliminated a lot of the natural, manageable stressors. Many of us don't experience physical discomfort regularly. We don't have to sit with boredom because our phones are always right there. We don't have to have uncomfortable conversations in person because we can text. We don't have to figure things out on our own because we have the internet in our pockets. But we've replaced these manageable stressors with chronic and unmanageable ones. So constant information overload, existential dread, nihilism, doom scrolling through everyone else's achievements and tragedies. So we're stressed all the time, but we're not building capacity from it because it's the wrong kind of stress. So here's what actually works according to research. It's cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, but not in the way that people usually think about it. CBT is not about toxic positivity, just thinking positive or telling yourself, things will be fine. That's denial. Your brain knows the difference. But it's not the opposite of that either. Like, I shouldn't have to do hard things, or any discomfort means that I should try to escape the situation. Actual CBT is more like, this is hard and I can handle hard things. Both parts matter. You acknowledge the difficulty and then you remind yourself of your capability. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I'm living in this weird contradiction. I run wellness retreats where I literally teach people about rest and boundaries and listening to their bodies. And I've seen people at my retreats who desperately need permission to rest, who are so burnt out that they are barely functioning. And I've also watched people, myself included, use listening to my body as a very convenient excuse to avoid things that are just uncomfortable. I'm neurodivergent, and one of the things that I've had to learn is that my body signals aren't always reliable. Sometimes I feel anxious about doing something new because my body is just like, danger, abort mission. But actually, I just need to do the thing anyway because it's growth, it's not a threat. And other times I don't actually feel tired until I'm in complete shutdown mode and I can't function. A partial list of things I'm super fragile about. Too much noise, too many people, being hot, doing my taxes, having something break on my car. Any of these can easily send me into a tailspin, and I've had to consciously build a sense of anti-fragility in each of these areas. The CBT reframe is not about denying the difficulty, but about interpreting it accurately and separating the feeling from the action. There's research on this called stress inoculation, where you gradually expose yourself to stressors. You practice reframing your thoughts about them, and over time you build capacity. So it's sort of the same principle as exposure therapy, right? It's just applied to everyday life instead of clinical phobias. And the key is you're building a skill. You are practicing talking yourself through discomfort so that the next time something's hard, you have a script. You've done hard things before and you can do them again. We see people now doing friction maxing, right? They're trying not to make life as easy as possible. They are cooking meals instead of door dashing. They are typing in a password or a credit card number online instead of just having it autofill. They're taking the stairs instead of the elevator, writing things by hand instead of typing, doing math in their heads instead of reaching for the phone in the calculator app. The whole idea is training yourself not to expect everything to be smooth and easy all the time. And it's becoming a trend on TikTok and in productivity circles, this idea that maybe we've optimized away too much friction and we're losing something in the process.
I hate how easy everything's becoming. I hate it. I hate DoorDash. I hate AI. I hate self-driving cars. Life was not meant to be this easy, and we argue that we're saving ourselves from all these mundane tasks so we have more time to socialize and create. You're actually sacrificing those things. Really, we're just freeing up time to consume, right? I need more time to watch TV and go to Target. Those mundane tasks are your life. Making yourself breakfast and going to the grocery store and driving your car and problem solving in your head without asking AI. That's your life. That's the whole point of your life. Like, what are you freeing up time for?
We also see people trying to build resilience through other kinds of anti-fragility practices. So cold plunges, difficult workouts. That is chosen physical discomfort, right? Public speaking or putting creative work out into the world. Having difficult conversations, setting boundaries that you know will upset people. All of that is interpersonal discomfort. Learning a new skill, taking on challenging projects at work, those are cognitive discomforts. And the thing that makes this different than forced hardship is that it's bounded. You are not in actual danger and you have agency. You can tap out if you need to. So the skill is discernment, to ask yourself, do I genuinely need to rest right now, or am I avoiding something uncomfortable? And that's hard, especially if you're neurodivergent and your body signals don't work like everyone else's. I can't always tell the difference between I'm tired and I need to stop and I'm just anxious about this thing and so I'm avoiding it. So I've learned to just experiment with it in really low stakes situations. I will try pushing through. Like, I'm tired, I'm going to work out anyway. I'm anxious, but I'm going to make the phone call anyway. And then I notice, was I glad that I did that? Did I feel better after? Or did it just drain me in a way that wasn't worth it? And over time, you start to build your own map. You learn where your actual limits are versus where your comfort zone ends, because those are not the same thing. The CBT practice helps with this. You start small because you don't build resilience by immediately doing the hardest thing that you can think of. That's just traumatizing yourself. You pick something manageable. You practice the self-talk, you notice how it feels, and you build capacity gradually. This is where it gets tricky though, because our culture has swung between two extremes. We went from tough it out always, your feelings don't matter, walk it off, we're not going to talk about it, to honor your feelings always. You never have to be uncomfortable, protect your peace, get away from people who need things from you. And neither of those work. The first approach breaks people because it ignores all signals from the body and mind. It leads to burnout, to injury, to mental health crisis. That's well documented. And that old tough it out messaging was heavily gendered. Traditional masculinity said, you don't complain, you don't show weakness, you don't ask for help. Real men don't cry. Real men push through. And so we've seen the cost of that, of rates of depression, anxiety. Emotional expression was never learned. So they had more dysfunctional relationships. The pendulum swing toward honor all your feelings was partly a correction to that. And in some ways, it's been necessary and good. Men being able to talk about their emotions and seek therapy is progress. People setting boundaries instead of martyring themselves or making work their whole life is healthy. But the second approach might be creating a different problem. If every uncomfortable feeling is treated as a traumatic event, then any boundary pushing is seen as violence. If all challenge is renamed as harm, then how does anyone build capacity? The real skill here is discernment. Being able to ask, is this discomfort teaching me something important? Is it just the feeling of growth? Or do I need rest? Without this skill of discernment, you're either just pushing through everything, burning out, ignoring your body, or avoiding everything that's hard and staying fragile. And neither one of those options is good. This is a cultural conversation too, not just an individual one. Some of us have been culturally conditioned towards fragility in specific ways. There's a whole book about white fragility, about how white people in America have been socialized to be so uncomfortable with racial topics that even discussing race can feel like an attack. That's a kind of fragility that comes from never having to develop that particular muscle. Or I think about how women have been historically positioned as delicate, as needing protection, the whole damsel in distress narrative. That's cultural conditioning toward fragility that white women in particular have been subjected to, being told that you're too weak to handle difficulty, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And now we're seeing new versions of this. Therapy language can be used to avoid accountability, ways to just shut down any kind of difficult conversation rather than tools for actual boundary setting. And meanwhile, there are communities and cultures that have had to develop resilience because they never had the luxury of fragility. Immigrant communities, working class communities, often Black women could not afford to fall apart at every difficulty because survival required toughness. But that's also created trauma, generational trauma from having to be tough all the time, from never getting to rest, from having your very real pain dismissed because you had to keep going. We need a culture that validates real struggle and also expects people to develop capacity, that provides support and also challenges people to grow, that acknowledges different starting points, different needs, neurodivergence, chronic illness, trauma histories, and also doesn't pathologize all discomfort as harm. This means that we can't have simple rules. We can't just say, always push through or never push through. We have to actually think about context in individuals and what's happening in any given situation. And that's uncomfortable. It's easier just to have a clear black and white answer. But the real nuance here is that you do have to learn your own patterns and build your own capacity and figure out what works for you. So that quote about hard times creating strong men, I think it is true enough to pay attention to. We are living in easier times in a lot of ways, but we do need to be able to face the hard things instead of waiting for life to force them on us. We might need to intentionally practice discomfort so that we don't lose our capacity to handle it. And I'm still figuring out where that line is for myself, that line between rest and avoidance, between challenging myself and just grinding myself down. And maybe you're figuring that out too. So let me know in the comments, have you tried friction maxing? Like, are you writing checks or are you tapping your phone to pay for everything? Maybe you are still trying to figure out if you even need to build more resilience or if you just need to rest. Make sure you're subscribed so that you can catch the next video to help you understand your brain. Thanks for watching.